first in North America. We're talking about in the world. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Statute on Religious Freedom, and now we're charging a preacher with a crime. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor. It carries up to 12 months in jail. Up to 12 months in jail he's facing because he chose to hold a service with 16 people in a facility rated for at least 225.
So let me get this straight. He practiced the distancing thing with the order that came out, and you go to a Walmart. I'm here in Clarksdale. I went to one yesterday. I don't know. There's probably 500 cars in the parking lot. Congressman, there was no social distancing there. The store was packed because it's the only thing open. I mean, if you want to buy food, where I am in the Delta, you got three choices: the gas station, Family Dollar, or Walmart. Everything else is closed. That's it. Or you can go to McDonald's. So everybody's, parking their cars. I mean, why did they single churches out?
Well,
what's
I'm
up
hoping
with
the
this
governor will give us some answers at his press conference this afternoon. But the bottom line is that there is no legal justification under our Constitution of the United States, or under the Constitution of Virginia, or under Virginia's Statute of Religious Freedom, to have churches having to have a stricter meeting requirement than going to Lowe's. You went to Walmart. I drove by the Lowe's on Saturday. You'd have thought there was a rock concert going on inside. I think 500 would be a conservative estimate on the number of cars that were there. There certainly were more than 16 people inside the Lowe's. Mm-hmm. The hardware stores are open. Look, I've been there. I'm not going to tell you I haven't. I try to do social distancing. I wear a mask on occasion if I remember to pull it out of the car. But churches ought to be able to make that decision for themselves. My church is doing it online. I don't think we would change. Okay, that's what our church has decided. But every church, if you really have religious freedom, every church should be able to make that decision for themselves. And that's why I'm calling on the governor. Enough time has gone. I think it was unconstitutional from the beginning, the way it was written, where it allows everybody else to get together. But I'm calling on the governor to let's get these churches open, let them make that decision. And of course, I think they ought to be looking at businesses on a regional basis in Virginia.
Right.
But this one's a constitutional issue. We can argue over what day you reopen businesses. But it is clearly a constitutional problem.
The question is, I can go to an ABC store and buy 20 bottles of vodka and scotch and get drunk off my butt, but I can't go into church. I mean, this just doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's got to be a reason. I mean, Ralph Northam doesn't do anything without some political purpose behind it. And I don't care what Clark Mercer says. This doesn't make any sense to me. We talked about him singling out churches you don't know. But when you asked him to open churches, right? I mean, he had to give you an answer why he's not doing it, right? I mean, did he give you an answer, or did he just blow you off, Congressman?
No, he didn't blow me off. I'm hoping that he will state his reasons publicly, but he gave me an answer that I felt like we were on a private conversation with the congressional delegation. I agree with the Justice Department. The state has not shown a compelling reason. I don't think the governor's answer to me showed a compelling reason, but I feel uncomfortable revealing what he said to me, because I think that would be a violation of, being able to talk candidly and frankly. But I didn't hear a compelling reason on Thursday, and I'm hoping the governor will just recognize there is no compelling reason that would require the Constitution to be suspended and churches not to be able to make that decision for themselves.
Let me just read your one line from your statement that you put out last night. You said, this is from Congressman Griffith. He said, "When troubles befall us, such as those we face today, where I come from, God is more important than alcohol, hardware, or crafts." I mean, it's a pretty compelling statement. You're on the John Fredericks Show. I mean, look, it doesn't make any sense not to be able to. You can go to Lowe's, you can go to Family Dollar, you can go to Walmart, you can go to the ABC store, but you can't go to church. Everything he does is political. There's some politics behind it. I got to figure it out, because the guy doesn't do anything that's not politically motivated. And I believe now that he's just reacting to his far left-wing progressive base, which basically allowed him to stay in office, to be frank and candid. Now, he's having a press conference today. We're supposed to open it up on May 8th, phase 1 or whatever that is. Do you think he's going to go forward with that, or do you think he's going to put it off again?
I don't know. My impression from the conversation on Thursday was that he's probably going to put it off.
Yeah.
But that's a decision he has to make as the governor in relationship to businesses, and we'll find out. Again, I would hope that he would have a regional approach to this and let some areas open up with at least a little bit with reasonable restrictions. Everybody ought to be practicing social distancing. If you're in a larger crowd, you ought to have a mask on. I think that's, I think we can continue to do that, but let's get some of these businesses open and get some people back to work.
The barber that I go to, the barber shop, this is just one example. It's just an easy one of hundreds. Nancy Bush, who's been there, she runs the barber pole there in Chesapeake. She's been there for a 30-year period. My mom worked there for a quarter century. She told me that May 8th, she's booked out. Her 5 people are booked out from May 8th to the end of the month, because that's when he said they were going to open, so they took appointments back. Of course, her barbers are not on payroll, right? Barbers work on 1099, so they're part of the gig economy, and so they work on tips and whatever, so they can't get unemployment. But she said, if this thing goes on another 2 weeks, I can't pay my rent. I'm looking at bankruptcy and just closing the thing down, because I've got to get these people back to work. Does he have any clue, any idea of how he is destroying small businesses in Virginia by the hour? Does Governor Northam have a clue here, Morgan?
It's hard to say. I mean, if you're in a business or a profession where you're going to get paid anyway, you don't realize how significant this is, how people are facing financial ruin, which, as everybody knows, brings about severe emotional problems for a lot of folks. It can lead people to commit suicide. I mean, it's a devastating and depressing situation to watch a business die that you've worked to build, and I'm not sure he fully understands it. I hope he has a clue. I think he probably has a clue, but I don't know that he's ever been in a sole practice business or a small, very, very small business where, you really are living off the land and eating what you kill, so to speak. And those businesses are in severe trouble throughout Virginia. I would submit, because my region is the poorest economically. It's a wonderful region, but the poorest economically, that we're having more problems here than in many other parts of the state. I mean, your barber has 5, mine has 2. A lot of barbershops in Southwest Virginia, it's a one-person operation, and so all of businesses of that size are in extreme distress, and it's very troubling and worrisome. And then we have the situation that popped up, and as you know, Tennessee opened up. So there's an article in the Examiner over the weekend, may have been even today, somebody sent me, where the Burger Bar in downtown Bristol, Virginia, can look across the street at the City Line bar, and these are hamburger joints. Mm-hmm. And they're open in Tennessee, but the guy in Virginia is still having to do curbside. And he said one day he only made $90. He said, I guess we'll survive. It's what we've got to do. But that is also troubling when, you're literally across the street from businesses that are allowed to open. Or in the case of churches, as we first talked about, you can go to the Lowe's, you can go to the liquor store, you can go to the Michael's craft store, but you can't go to church even if your faith requires you to do so. So it's a troubling time, and I hope the governor understands that this is tough on a lot of people. And look, I know the governor's got to make tough decisions, but I think he needs to Open up regionally, the state of Virginia, and of course, without question, let churches make their own decision.
We were sold on closing because we don't want to overrun the healthcare system. Right now in Virginia, hospitals have lost millions and millions of dollars. He finally allowed elective surgeries back because hospital employees were getting furloughed. They were closing entire floors. The insanity of this. But we've got 5,000 open COVID-19 beds in Virginia. We're at 23% of the ventilators that we have. So we've got 77% ventilator capacity and 82% COVID-19 bed capacity. What is the argument now not to open businesses? I mean, what is the argument? You can say, well, yesterday there were 19 people that died. Okay, in Virginia we've done 120,000 tests and we've got 18,000 cases. That means that if you just take those numbers, 15% of everybody tested has or has had COVID-19. 15%. We got 8.5 million people. Right? So 15% times 8.5 million people, well, that's over 1 million. That's 1.3 million. And we've had 660 deaths. So if you do the math, this is just the people that are being tested are being tested because they had some symptoms that would lead you to believe they might have it. So the number is dramatically higher than that. I just don't know how the governor continues to put people into bankruptcy based on the fact that we have 5,000 open beds and 77% of our ventilators sitting in a warehouse, when that was the original purpose behind this, Congressman.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have forgotten that the idea was to bend the curve. We never said we were going to be able to get rid of this disease by staying at home or to completely avoid it. We're trying to keep it out of nursing homes. Unfortunately, that's where we've had about half the deaths in Virginia. Absolutely, all the restrictions on nursing homes ought to be maintained, and we ought to continue to be very aggressive there. People who have comorbidities ought not go out, but the bottom line is the shutdown was never intended to make sure it was 100% safe to go outside. That's not the intent. The intent was to make sure our hospitals were ready and that we had bent the curve. I believe we've bent the curve, and clearly our hospitals are ready.
Well, we've done that, but now they keep changing the goalposts. Now it's testing, then it's going to be contact tracing, and the day after that they'll come up with something else to keep us shuttered. But, 660 people have died in Virginia. About half of those were in nursing homes. Now, we all agree, Congressman, we have to sequester and protect the aged. Everybody understands that. And also those that have compromised health, they shouldn't go out. They should be protected. But if you take that out, you've got about 350 deaths outside of nursing homes. I don't know what the demographics are on that. And if you just do the math, you've got over 1 million cases in Virginia. If everybody was tested and the 16% holds, right, you got like 8.5 million people times 16%, 1.2 million. That puts the mortality rate at about 2 out of 1,000, which is slightly over the flu. We're like shutting down America and destroying the country. It's insane to me. They say science, math, and numbers, and then you look at the science, math, and numbers, and what they're doing doesn't make any sense based on the science, math, and numbers.
Yeah, it's a tough time, and tough decisions have to be made. On the other side of that coin, we can't destroy the American economy when the risk is able to be handled.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Perfectly put. Congressman Morgan Griffith, thank you for your time today, and thank you for standing up for churches and pastors and getting those open. And I hope we'll get a positive response out of that, because I, for one, want to go back to church. I'm just not into the streaming thing. Sorry. John Fredericks Radio Network.